So I am Claudia Quintanilla. I work for the Fish Forever program at RARE, where our goal is to revitalize our coastal seas and communities. The way we are approaching that is through our scale units of managed access and reserve areas. We work in exclusively the coastal zones where small-scale fishers really depend on coastal resources for their livelihood. So in the tropics, and our goal is to protect 20% of critical habitats for the species that coastal communities depend on for their livelihoods. We include coral, mangrove, and seagrass in that 20% and networked at the right scale. So what that means is basically we have a managed access area where artisanal fishers are granted preferential rights to use that area for fishing, and reserves within that area that maintain the fisheries populations. And the logic there is if we're asking people to not fish in those areas, then they should be the ones that have, preferential rights to reap the benefits of not fishing. Networked at the right ecological scale because they are, connected to each other along the seascape, so we can actually have the connectivity of the different populations of species that we're trying to protect and have the ecological benefits that we are hoping for. At its core, our core concept is really community-led management for sustainable coastal fisheries. That's at the center of what we do. Therefore, devolved authority and for co-management of these areas is really critical to our approach. Around the core of our concept here, we have community engagement, network of marine reserves, effective management bodies, data for decision-making, and managed access as kind of the key components of what we call our site-level work. And around that are the system conditions that really enable this work to be able to happen. So that's policy and governance, innovative finance, and behavior adoption. And I'll talk a little bit about those in a bit. Examples of our scaling units, we have here our work in Mozambique, where we started off in these kind of green dots along the coast. And now we are looking towards kind of covering, again, thinking about ecological scale and the right ecological scale for this approach to be effective, is working along the provinces along the whole coast of Mozambique, or the majority of it, through different kind of scaling pathways, which again, I will talk about in a little bit. We have our current sites that are what we would call under a direct pathway, our future sites, and then the other kind of grid and bluer areas here are where we're partnering with others, again, through different types of scaling pathways to be able to effectively protect the coastal seascape. So our scaling ambition is really to contribute to the 30 by 30 conservation goals through having 1.4 million square kilometers of the coastal resources in tropical areas either under or on the path to improved management. Again, community-led management. And our approach is really through these 4 different pathways. I'll get into how they relate specifically to the work that we've been doing with the FOS network, because we had started to think a lot about our scaling approach before we kind of got into the mix of this wonderful network. So it's been really great to see how additive, really working through the scaling pathways and approaches of the FOS network has really helped us clarify what we mean by what we had already started working on. So I think that's something that's really been helpful for us, is to look at even our own logic from a very different angle to really solidify and consolidate what it is, how to bring this to life. So basically we have, kind of direct, supported, influence, and ecosystem-led pathways for us. I'll show you what that means in a slide in a little bit. But if you think about it as a gradient of our direct involvement, in actually implementing activities directly. So direct is, clearly us doing more of the work, all the way to ecosystem-led is us doing less of the work. That's a kind of a simplified way to think about it. And we are dividing our scale ambition into these 2 phases over the next kind of 10 more or less years. We're in scale phase 1 from now to 2027, kind of focusing on consolidating our direct approach and systemizing it, documenting in a way that's shareable, so it'll lead to better and more effective supported and influence, and then really thinking from then on, where even if we maintain the direct kind of reach of our program, we're really growing exponentially the supported and influence pieces. Here's basically, again, like a description of what the scaling approaches are according to what we had kind of previously worked on. Again, direct is really what we're doing right now. Us very closely working at the site level, really working at the community level, and then kind of as we move all the way to the ecosystem-led is continuously being the farther away, so to speak, from the direct work. So when supported is us helping other people do this work, and influencing is us influencing the people that are doing this work, and an ecosystem-led is really thinking about the coalition of partners and stakeholders that need to come together to give more priority and to provide more resources for small-scale fisheries. So when we think about this from the perspective of what we were doing here, our ultimate goal is healthy and resilient coastal communities and ecosystems. The primary actors there are fishers and fish workers. We don't quite yet have a nicer term, I would say, for all the people that are involved in directly with fisheries and fisheries management that aren't the direct fishers, but think about all the people that are involved in the fisheries value chain, women, youth, et cetera, that are in some way, shape, or form associated with coastal resources, but aren't necessarily doing the fishing themselves. And so the behaviors there, we've boiled it down to 3: participating, respecting the rules, regulations, and registering, participating in management, that is. And in this kind of scenario, when we were looking at system tilt, it really is quite an upward system tilt. The system right now favors industrial fishing activity and centralized authority. And when we think about community-led management being at the core and center of our approach, these two things, are really critical for us to be able to kind of surpass. Without that, then it really is a really steep upward battle. And so when we went through, if we go through our kind of decision tree, you can see, the overall system tilt is going uphill, and can we change that? Yes, we believe we can through our approach 4, which is, the systems change. And so what that has led us to, and kind of, this is, I think to many of you have said, this is not a linear process, right? We're putting it right now for presentation purposes in a linear way, but it really isn't. But as we kept on kind of going through, the decision tree and kind of thinking through all these different actors, really where we landed is that we have 2 kind of sets of strategies. The system level strategies just speak more to approaches 4 and 5 of scaling, and then the site level strategies, which really speak more to approaches 1, 2, and 3. So if we kind of think about, what we do in these 2 buckets, and considering our system tilt is upward because of centralized authority and preference for industrial fisheries, when we look at our systems level strategies from this perspective, really what's really helping us move the tilt is our policy and governance work. So really looking at the legal frameworks that will devolve authority for co-management and provide preferential rights for coastal fishers. And so once we kind of have that in place, then we can actually look at what the barriers are, again, thinking about the fishers, and can we remove them both at the barrier level, at the system level and at the site level, and we said yes to both. And so we get a combination of approach 4 and then approaches 1, 2, 3. Basically, the 2 main barriers that we looked at from the fisher's perspective is non-functional governance at the community level and just really insecure household financial circumstances. So what that leads us to, if we think about this again, is if you look at systems level strategies for science is connected to community-led managed access and reserve strategies. So those two have like this logical link between them, where at the national or subnational level, we're thinking about these regional networks of reserves and setting up the data management systems for information to flow through that system effectively and then inform what the managed access and reserves are at each site. The policy and governance strategy feeds directly also into community-led management in terms of the preferential rights, making sure the management bodies will have authority for co-management, and the managed access and reserve areas will be able to be recognized within the legal system. And then finally, these strategies right here, like for finance on the systems level, so really bringing in government institutions, private sector investments, and financial institutions to provide adequate services for communities to build their financial resilience at the community, at the site level. And behavior adoption, which straddles both, right? There's a lot of detail that we can go into precisely what we do with behavior adoption, and we have psychosocial theories of change that kind of underpin all of the other activities that both lead to improved financial habits and just financial resilience in the household and actual effective participation in management. So, our last piece that that we're looking at is really thinking about doing the math. This is quite an intense and complicated effort, in all truth, for a couple of reasons for us. I think one, we are really familiar right now with our direct implementation pathway. That's just kind of where we're at. We have some ideas, some experiments here and there with others, but really this is what we know best. There's even kind of layers of that, or if you think about our scaling unit being the managed access and reserve site, it's really hard to track down, even in our budgeting and financing systems, like what a specific effort and cost went into that one management area. If you think about there's, not 20% of Claudia goes to here, there, and there, and so that's, also complicated to try to really pin down then what the math for each of our scaling units is, but we're, sorting that out, and just kind of thinking ahead, the things that we're really, this has kind of the doing the math question has really pushed us to think about our monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And so if we are going to go down these other pathways where we are more removed from direct implementation, what does that mean in terms of what we can actually, count, and how we're going to count for our impact? So really thinking I think, intentionally about that, and the theories of change that we have developed now, I think, have given us a really, really clear launch pad to think, okay, if this intermediate outcome here is what we are looking to build, regardless of who does it, then it's like a gradient of how you measure our direct impact on that. So that, I think, has interesting potential to explore as we kind of move forward with this work. And then really looking at enhancements at our finance and budgeting process, just to be able to track better, right, where all this effort goes, which is, we're just not quite there yet. So if we assess how we're doing, we kind of have gotten through these, defining the math, still a big question. We're obviously at a go. We had already made that decision. And then really completing your full scaling strategy. I just want to really emphasize how this is a work in progress with country teams, right? Because if anything, something that this has really given us is this really wonderful way to understand the full scope of what we do, whether we do it ourselves or we do it through other people. And I think that was what, if I really look at, the cumulative work that we and thinking that we've been doing around scale, this gives us the ability to do, because this is going to look very different for each country, right? Every country, every subnational region will have different strengths. And so again, this gives us just a common language to think about and to talk about. This is what we are all collectively hoping to achieve. What is the best role that we as RARE can have in this particular context to achieve that? And, is it going to be that we are going to be, working directly in these, where we have like the blue labels and these outcomes, where are there already partners that are all really, really great at this, and we just need to maybe kind of give them a little bit of training and support and resources? Where is it that we have policymakers that we just need to influence? And I think that clarity of how we were going to actually implement the scale strategies is not something that we had we not maybe have worked together through this process. So I think it's been, really, really a great discovery and great work. So thank you. That's it.